Working Cows Podcast, episode 221.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, powered by the Global Ag Network. Here with another episode for you guys. Very excited to be joined by Wally Olson. Wally is a treasure in this industry, a guy who's been doing it for a long time, a guy who's learned these principles from Stan Parsons himself and continued to work on sharpening his management axe, and been a guy who's come alongside a lot of young producers over the years and helped them get their start. So today we are going to talk to Wally about a statement that he made recently on a webinar about every ranch needing some sheep. And he's been involved in a personal way and in a custom or in an investor way with the custom sheep business for a long time. And so I wanted to talk to him about that. And I guess remiss over the last couple of weeks, wishing everybody a Merry Christmas. Thanks for all the just community and support and so much just goodwill that I've enjoyed from this podcast over the years, and been a blessing to my family. Patreon supporters have been a huge blessing to us over the years, and continue to try to catch up and kick out some bonus content, talk to Wally about some bonus content later on about his role as an investor and what it takes to be an investor in ranching, and he had some good wisdom to share there. So, but for now, really looking forward to this conversation with Wally about why every ranch needs some sheep and how to be involved in the sheep business on your ranch. So, Wally, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast. Welcome back.
Yes, very good to be here.
I was sitting on the hosting. I was hosting the November coffee shop, which they do coffee shops for the RFP Online, which is for subscribers and EL members, alumni of Ranching for Profit. I've been hosting those webinars, and I started out hosting the last of the coffee shops. They do those during the winter months. And it's a place to go and not complain about markets and weather like other coffee shops I've been exposed to. But anyways, I was hosting that, and you made a statement that every ranch needs a sheep, and that piqued my interest. You're not the first one I've heard say that, and my ranch has some sheep, and so I guess I just kind of wanted to dive into why that is and how to make that work. So I guess wherever you want to start, but why does every ranch need a sheep or need some sheep?
Well, one of the main reasons why the diversity of grazing between sheep, cattle, and goats is the United States spends a horrendous amount of money, or the world, I think, fighting weeds, and weeds could be one of your greatest profit centers if you run them through a goat or a sheep, especially now. I mean, it's phenomenal what's going on in the sheep business right now and stuff. But if you're going to get into the sheep and goat business, you have to, and this comes from hoss hopping, you have to have a shepherd's mentality. I mean, there's a different way of going about running sheep than cattle. You know, there's lots of, I'll put it this way, there's lots of ranch wives that go bouncing down old rough roads going to town to work, probably for health insurance rather than wages. And it's a good enterprise for wives and kids can do if you can't humble yourself up to do it, you know.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. First of all, we totally agree at our house. You know, I mean, just think about the difference between even a 2-week-old lamb and a 2-week-old calf. You know, my kids can jump in there with a 2-week-old lamb, grab it by the back foot, and you know, wrangle it, whatever we need to do, whatever we're doing, whether docking or you know, whatever we're doing, castrating they can handle it. They can be involved. And my kids, my oldest is 13, my youngest is 7, and all of them were in the pen with the lambs when we were docking, bringing them to us. And so, I mean, they're a part of it. They are involved, and yeah, very, very much really appreciate them from that perspective. And I think back to that shepherd's mentality that my wife, maybe she's just a better stockman than me all around, but she's definitely better with sheep than I am.
And the other thing that intrigues me about them is that how if you want to, and this is getting away from running sheep with the ranch, but if you're a young person wanting to start out in ranching, if you want to go lease you a ranch and run cows, it is very hard to go lease a ranch and run cows and stuff. Just, it's hard to find them. The old farts like me are there ahead of you, and it's just hard. But one thing that I see is, there's a gentleman, I don't know his name, out of Colorado that puts sheep out, will lease grazing, and he pays you $4 a month. So if you use the $4 a month, if you could go lease grazing to help somebody control their weeds and stuff, that's $48 a year. And if you have $70,000 of family living expense, that's $70 per ewe a year. And if you take opportunity costs at 25% on a $350 ewe, and then $48 other costs, that's $245 to run a ewe. And if you 100% lamb crop, that's $210, and at 1.5, it's $315. That is, to me, a phenomenal thing, and it doesn't take that much to run 1,000 ewes.
Right. Yep. Can we go back to, you need to be a shepherd? What are some of the things that go into having a shepherd's mentality?
Well, one thing is to understand what you need to get done, and the biggest thing in sheep, is you have got to, in my opinion, you either got to shed lamb them, or else you've got to lamb them on green feed. And if you're going to lamb them on green feed, you are going to breed late, in December or January, since the 150-day gestation period. And consequently, since sheep and goats are short-day breeders, the rut starts in August and September, and everybody that I put sheep out with, I explained to them that they're going to have a tough time keeping the rams shut up, and everybody does, and we lamb a lot in January, and it's that you've got to understand and watch and things such as that. Matter of fact, I am a big proponent that if you're going to be in the sheep business, you need to have a 22 Magnum rifle. So if you miss a lamb when you're ram lamb, you just go out and shoot it. Even whether you don't butcher it, you just make sure you shoot it, because everybody, there's two stories. I think everybody that runs sheep and stuff is, one is the day they walk across someplace in January, February, or March, picking up dead lambs by the truckload. And another one is the hot check that you get from the sheep deal and stuff, or when you sell your sheep. Those are two of the big stories out there.
Yep. Yeah. I think when I was in your marketing school, I asked the question, how old do you need to be keeping an eye on those ram lambs and their breeding potential? And you somewhat facetiously said, 3 or 4 days. That they're ready to go a lot earlier than you think, and if you're not paying attention, they will put you in a bind.
And then moving on through the things on shepherding, you've got to understand and be able to control your worms. And I don't care where you're at. And when you're, and when you go to buy sheep that are worm resistance, part of that is genetics, but a lot of that is management. And you go buy the world's best worm resistant sheep and you dump them out there and don't continue the management of them, I guarantee you your worm resistant sheep won't be worm resistant very long.
We have not wormed sheep. We've owned sheep since March of 2020, I think. So we're just over a year in. We've never wormed a sheep. And that's just because we've moved them every day, every other day. Right now they're roaming free for a little bit, but they'll get locked back up pretty soon. But I've heard other people talk about that sheep like to sleep on the high ground, so they eat all day, but then they go lay back down and sleep on that high ground and poop and everything else, and then they're just recycling those same parasites and increasing that load, and it makes it hard on them. So I think that's a good thing. And again, that management is as much as important as genetics, because we just bought 5 and 6 year old ewes when we bought them, and out of a, from what I understand, conventional operation, and we haven't wormed one yet. We just keep running them and trying to put them on fresh, clean grass as much as possible.
And you talked about buying your sheep. I have mixed emotions about this. If you can, buy them from out in the country and try to keep them cleaner than, the big thing is sore mouth and foot rot, and stay away from that. But also, or another way to look at it is you're just going to manage. I mean, that's what we did, is we just managed. One great advantage you have is where you live is drier. If you're in a wet environment, you need to understand that you're going to have more worms and you're going to have more foot problems, and you just need to work on selection. There's people that can do it and have done it, and you just need to understand that. And you need to look at your first sheep just like I think you're looking at your first sheep, as an education to learn how to do it. And I wouldn't step out there and buy a band of 1,000 ewes. I promise you that. You ease into it and stuff. Yeah.
I should say, on the worming front, 2019 there was 40 inches of rain in western South Dakota. 2020 there was 9 inches. We usually get 15, 16. So 2019 there was 40 inches of rain. We usually get 15 or 16. 2020 there was 9, and then in 2021 there was 7. So it might just be that I've been basically managing sheep in the desert the last 2 years when I've owned them. So that was a distinct advantage, maybe. But yes, I agree. It's been an education for sure, but one that I've been enjoying, partly because the market has been phenomenal.
Phenomenal, yes. And one other thing is, you need to understand that, because in 1998, when we first got our first goats, we ran along there for a few years and just did very well. One, it was a new enterprise and different things. Also, when you look back, it was a time when we were below normal rainfall. And then when the rainfall ramped up, let me tell you what, and they got, we got stuff more, infected with worms and just different things. We had lots of problems and stuff. And I know that at one time we were going to select for good-footed sheep, and there was a lady that took care of our sheep there on the ranch, and Darla and I decided that we were going to select for good-footed sheep. And by golly, one day we walked across the pen and we did not have one limping goat. Excuse me, I was saying sheep, but goat on the ranch. But we also didn't have any goats left. So just But and for me, if you're in a hot, dry area, the Great Basin, anywhere where it's hot and dry and rocky, that is goat country. Goats like dust. They can handle dust and stuff, whereas they can't handle wet and cold and things.
Yep. Yeah, I was watching there's a Bible study series called Adventures in the Holy Land with Ray Vanderlaan, and he takes people out into the places that the Bible talks about, and he just talks about what happened in these places. And one of the places is right around the foot of Mount Sinai, and it's just big red boulders and rocks and dirt and maybe a brush every once in a while. And I leaned over to one of the guys when we were watching the video and said, that looks like a tough place to raise a cow. And about 10 minutes later in the video, here comes a goat herder walking through there with his goats. It's like, he's making it work somehow.
Yep. And stuff. So, you just need to, be aware of that. And one of the big things is you need to, back to the shepherd thing, you need to understand predators and how you're going to manage, them. Are you going to night pin them, and just all those different things. And with predators, comes, your guard animals, and I'm a believer in guard dogs, and if you're going to run guard dogs, you need to help your guard dogs out and keep the sheep bunched up so they aren't you just need to keep them bunched up so they can work, rather than a little band going off this way and a little band going off that way, and the dogs go with the bigger band and stuff.
Yep. And also, on a small scale, we've used electric net fencing with great success. I mean, yes. I hear coyotes every night at my house, and they sound close. I don't know how close they actually are, but I hear coyotes every night. And we've lost 2 sheep to predators, both of them lambs. One of them a brand new lamb, and I'm not so sure that wasn't because we built our electric net fence around a badger hole. And then the other one was a lame lamb we just lost a couple of weeks ago, and she just vanished. I saw her limping one day, and then I never saw her again. So I don't know where she went, but so I think that's helped us a lot. But the electric net fencing is a pain when it's a lot of work to move it regularly. So but it is a good tool for that. But if you got the scale, the guard dogs are good.
Yep. I will completely. And also, guard dogs can be a profit center in raising raising pups and stuff. I mean, because there is nothing easier to sell than a guard dog when somebody's having coyotes hit their sheep. I mean, tell you, it is easy to sell one. And yep. Stuff. Now, one thing you have to understand, the business of that, if you're going to, raise guard dogs, you need to bond them to whatever you can bond to chickens, you can bond them to, but you want to get them bonded to everybody, I always bonded all of my guard dogs to sheep, cattle, and goats, and they will differentiate between goats and sheep, because I was going to put some sheep into our goat herd, and when we dumped them 22 ewe lambs out, I mean, them guard dogs chased them, chased 2 of them in the pond, chased one of them clear off. We never did find, and we finally got the others gathered up, and I sent them to Walt Davis because he had sheep at that time. And so you need to understand that. If you're going to be in the sheep and goat business, you will have a continual guard dog development program. I mean, if you have any number of sheep at all, and if you're going to have guard dogs, you have to have at least 2 guard dogs just because of the way they work. And also, if something happens to one guard dog and you only have one guard dog, you're in a world of hurt. And I'll sell you, I'm just kidding. And, it's just part of, going back to being a shepherd. This is just what you do,
Yeah. We have a guard dog, but he's not with the sheep. We bonded him to the kids and the chickens, and we've left our house with the chicken coop wide open for a couple, 3 days at a time. And in the 2 years we've been doing that, I think we've only lost 1 chicken. So, he does good. He's solid. Whenever we whenever the kids are out away from the house, we take a picture. He just happens to be laying right there in the foreground of the picture. He's always with the kids. So, which hopefully he finds the snake before they do. So, yep. But yeah, no, we love it. We love our guard dog. They're a lot of fun, but they can definitely eat. That's for sure.
Yes, they can definitely eat and things. So, but back to and it's this getting into sheep and goats. All the businesses are relationship businesses. We've been talking about how high sheep are. Mm-hmm. And yes, they are. But if you buy a $350 ewe, you can sell $315 worth of lambs out of her, and have $87 opportunity costs in her. That's 25% return on your investment. That beats a poke in the eye. So you need to be aware of the relationships. Just like a lot of people right now, like you guys are experiencing drought and feed's high, and just they go, and that's true. It's all high, but it's the relationships. There is some very good buys. If you got any kind of feed at all, there's very good buys in bred cows to, even with this feed that high, and back to the relationship, people talk about how you can't feed through a drought. Well, you need to look at the relationships, because I have cattle in a grow yard now that are working very well.
Yep.
But because it's the relationship. So in all ranching, or I guess in all business, you need to be looking at the relationships.
Right. I was over at a neighbor's house the other day helping him work, and he'd told me a long time ago that they'd never been as profitable as when they had a bunch of sheep running around. But like everybody, when the kids go away or whatever, they got out of sheep a few years ago, and we were loading panels that day and trudging through some sagebrush, and he said, "Man, I wish I still had some sheep around this year because we're in a dry time." And I said, "Oh, do they keep that sagebrush in check for you?" He said, "No, shoot, they can live on that and a pound of corn." So, it's just something. They get by on different forage than you think when you're thinking with a cowman's mindset. They get by on a different kind of forage than the cow does.
Yes. Have you ever read the book "The Time It Never Rained" by Elmer Kelton? You need to read that. It's a story of the drought in Texas in the 50s. And the main character in there is a rancher by the name of Charlie Flagg. It's just a story of how he, goes through the drought. He's very independent. He won't take any government payments, to feed through the drought. And basically he ends up, he buys a set of Angora goats, and he's basically out there cutting trees down to feed the goats. And what's interesting, I read that book 3 times, and the last time I read it, I was the same age as Charlie Flagg, and it was an entirely different book and stuff. But if you ever have a chance, just read "The Time It Never Rains." And
Yeah. Show notes page for today is workingcows.net/221. So that book will be in the show notes page for today if you want to check that out. And we'll send people towards buying that book. So, yeah, I guess just continuing on. And I think that most people would say that one of the main challenges, I think maybe the main challenge with sheep is people's pride or dignity, or however friendly you want to be with that. You can phrase that however you want. But the biggest challenge, the second biggest challenge with sheep maybe is what kind of fencing? What kind of fencing do you need to keep them in, and how do you think about those things?
One thing is on the Kelly Ranch that I managed. It basically all the fences had been built in the 40s, and the prior management had just gotten by, so there was a huge need to replace fencings. And so when we started out fencing, we just took, a set of hot wire, one or two hot wires off of a barbed wire fence, and then we went to using some 8 and 9 barbed wire fences, and we also, it didn't cost very much. If you're building a new fence, it doesn't cost very much to put up netting after that. So those are two of the things. And my nephew up in Kansas now is doing something interesting. He is buying wool ewes and putting them out with his cows. He is not using any guard animals with them. He is using, in the grazing sales, he is using 2 hot wires, and he is not doing anything with the perimeter fences. It's just to keep and I need to check back with him. This is his second year, I believe, and it's going well. Like you said, the learning curve is straight up, but it's going well.
Yeah, we put in grazing cells this year. We did a pretty classic ranch management consultants grazing cell design on the place that we've got. And so where the water point is, I put electric net fencing there around the water point, and then I ran 3 hot wires off of the spine fence, I call it, that splits our place in half. I ran 3 hot wires off of that, and once I got it hot, I never had a sheep out after that. It wasn't hot the first time I put them in there. I was trying to run the net fencing and the 3 hot wires off the same charger, and I was only getting like 5,000 volts in it. And then when I took the charger and I put it on its own solar, or when I took the net fencing and put it on its own solar charger, and I took the hot wires and put them just on the 110 charger I've got running from the house on the high tensile fence, then I was getting 9,000 volts in both, and never had a sheep out after that. So I don't know if I could have gotten away with 2. I just started with 3, but we're getting ready to put them back in. We're going to wean some calves and send our cows to Nebraska, and so we're getting ready to put them back in that same setup with some weaned calves, and we'll see how that goes, or if I can get away with 2. Well, maybe I'll try that. But
one thing on fencing and stuff, I always have the statement that hungry goats get out, period. And, you need to look at rather than control, everybody, I don't know how we got into agriculture. We got to control everything, and we just need to learn to live and profit from it. And if you got brush, have some goats and just utilize your brush and, profit from it. And I promise you, when you start grazing those goats to where you're going to control that stuff, I mean to tell you what, it's going to be, problems. And that's, that is that.
What kind of problems?
They're going to get out.
Okay.
Gotcha. You're going to have more, worm problems because you're staying longer, and just, you need to go into this, back to the shepherding, go into this with the attitude that you're going to utilize and profit from rather than control.
Yeah. What about marketing sheep? Is there a time that's better than another? And then also, is you have a broader perspective, much broader perspective than I do. Is marketing sheep doable kind of around the country? I live, I think, in one of the better spots in the world as far as marketing sheep is concerned, especially the wool sheep that we run. We've got a great big wool warehouse right here, just 70 miles from our house, and then one of the bigger sheep markets that I know of is 35 miles from my house. So is that? I mean, I'm sure that situation isn't typical, but is it pretty easy to market sheep across the country?
I do not know for sure about, I've never had trouble marketing sheep. I mean, I live in Northeast Oklahoma, and there's getting to be more sheep and goat sales, all the time and stuff. And back to, and this is just, everybody tries to hit the Easter market. Well, hitting the Easter market, I mean, to me, I've always dealt with hair sheep, and the ultimate hair sheep, to sell is about 70 pounds. That is the animal that people want. I mean, and so, if you and then going back to lambing on green feed, if you lamb in late April or May, you will have a very adequate lamb to sell in December and January, which the market is very, very good. I mean, this year with the storm in Texas, it's been good the whole year.
Yeah, I've been wondering about that because we bought them and it was pretty good when we bought our sheep. We gave $225 a head for May lambing ewes in March. And then it just kept getting better and it stayed good. We just sold 50 pound lambs. They were our bums. Honestly, they were just the bums that we'd collected from other people's sheep. And I don't know if we had maybe one of our own in there. We just sold 50 pound lambs for $3.59 a pound, in just a week ago. So, I mean, it's stayed good and continued to get better. And I guess I hadn't figured out what that was about, but you're telling me it's was it that big freeze in Texas? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, the big freeze in Texas, because it happened just right as Texas was lambing and kidding.
Huh. Wow.
And when we're talking about marketing, you need to apply the golden rule. And what that is if you have the gold, you rule. And
how does that relate to marketing sheep? What is the goal?
If you are selling sheep in the country, you understand what I'm trying to say? You have the gold in your bank account before you release control of those sheep. And I will relate to you a story. One year I bought the Billy Goat kids out of the world's champion goat roping in Del Rio, Texas. And there was 865 of those things on the truck when they came in. And we kept them and we cut them and rent them the summer. And I sold them back to the same broker that I'd bought them from. And the check never came. And I finally called him up and I said, look, I sold you those mutton goats. I said, where's the check at? And he said, well, he sold them to a guy in Muslim in New Jersey. And he didn't like 3 of them because when you sell to a Muslim, nobody trusts anybody. And so they sell the goat carcass with the head on. And if they broke tooth, you understand, if they got rid of their baby teeth in the first 2, they don't get as much for them. And there was 3 of them on that truckload of goats that, he wasn't happy with. And finally I told him, I said, well, what's it going to take to make you happy? And well, he's worried about them 3 goats. I said, well, just give him them 3 goats and get the rest of the money, so needless to say, we did finally get our checks. I have forgiven that goat broker, but as you understand what I'm saying today, I have not forgot, and so have
Fool
the
me
goat
once.
broker.
Shame on you. Shame on you.
You take them, if you take them to, I don't know what the commission is in South Dakota, but if you go to a goat sale around here, it's a very high commission because there is a lot. Well, the cattle business, when you sell cattle, it's very established, and most of the time the money is there and everything. In the goat business, if you've been in the goat business very long, trading goats and stuff, you will have a bad check story. I promise you.
Yeah. No, it's $35 on those $5 a head. We only had 7 of those bums, so $5 a head. But I think we unloaded them at 11 and they were sold by 2 or something like that. So it wasn't like they were there for a couple of days or anything. So anyways, yes, I agree. Sell in December, January. We have been doing that. And a lot of the good sheep guys that I go to church with, that's what they've figured out in the last couple of years, is that kind of second week in January is always about the hottest market that there is. And they've been going then. So,
and you don't have to grind through the winter,
right?
You understand? It's just easy.
Sheep are fun. I love watching sheep graze through 6-8 inches of snow. They'll paw at the ground and get down to that forage under there, and they're fun to watch. They're just they're a working animal. They do well. They're very, very resourceful.
Well, the only other thing we have not talked about in sheep and goat business is you can get herders. You understand what I'm saying? And I have never employed a herder. I've had sheep out with people that have had herders, they can be very, very good or very, very bad. And it's kind of like the guard dogs. It's just a different part of the business that you need to understand and how it works. And I promise you, you always need to have an extra herder, just like you need to have an extra guard dog, because
they run into visa issues and families back home get sick and things like that. And they've got to go.
Or they just disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've talked to, I think at least 3 separate operations, 4 people on 3 separate operations, and kind of ran this ratio of about 1,000 sheep will pay for a herder. It'll pay them year round. They're taken care of by that. The cost of having the herder there is covered by those sheep, plus leaves profit left over. And these are all guys in the ranching for profit ecosystem and been doing it a long time, and that ratio seems to work for them. So I don't know if it's possible doing it with less, but I know that's kind of what I keep hearing. So as far as scale is concerned. So I got a couple of questions for you from the private Facebook group. And this one was a good one. Brad Kaler says, after having some sheep, why do I need to keep some cows on the ranch?
One thing you need to keep some cows on the ranch, depending on how wet you are, is to manage your worm cycles and stuff. And also you need to have some diversity of your income, and just you just need you need lots of diversity in your plants, or you need lots of diversity in your animals, and that's probably the better reason and stuff. And cattle have been very, very good to me. I mean,
And I guess Derek Schwanebeck says he wants to know how you get the bank on board. And my tongue in cheek response was sell some cows, but I don't.
that is at one time. Now it's really changed because cows have come down. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
And sheep have really went up. You can. If you get a lamb and a half out of your ewes, and you sell them for what they're selling for, you can go almost buy a 250, 300 pound heifer calf.
Yep.
And so, in the past, it had been, you could sell a $1,500 cow and buy back 10 ewes or 8 ewes, and stuff. So, if you're going to do that, like I said, you're very absolutely right. Sell some cows,
Maybe the bigger question is, how do I get the neighbor on board? But, that's just management, I suppose.
Yep.
Well, Wally, I appreciate your time today. Anything else pressing on this sheep front? I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask you for some bonus content, but do you have anything else to say on this sheep front or any other thoughts?
We pretty well covered it. If anybody has any questions, tell them to feel free to get a hold of me. I am like I said, at the present time, I am out of the sheep business, and mainly because I thought sheep were about as high as they were going to get, which I was wrong. And, but
probably better to be right on that side than thinking they'll go up again and then have the crash come. But
yep, fear and greed, Clay.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what you've got going on with Ranching.FYI and some of those things.
One thing that I have started, and with Cinnamon Linhart and John Haskell, we have started Ranching.FYI. It's a subscription website, and we have we're just gathering up stuff. Chip Hines and I were very good friends, and we always talked about, his grandmother talked about putting an old head on young shoulders, and him and I spent probably the last 10 years discussing and doing, how to get information transferred to the next generation and gather it up. And, Chip was good enough to write some really great books, and so he did a good job. Well, since I can't spell, I'm not going to write a book. I promise you that. And so I stumbled into Cinnamon, and I've known John for a long time. And so we've just started Ranching.FYI, and it's going. We've got content on there by Steve Campbell, and there's a Gerald Fry school that I happen to have recorded back in 2002's on there. So if you want to understand about Gerald Fry, and we're just gathering up information. And, like Chip talks about, when somebody dies, the library closes. So one that I'm still mad at him is Dick Devon, started low cost cow calf nutrition. And he smoked cigarettes like he died of lung cancer, and it just went away. And that's a very sad thing. There's these newsletters out there, but it just went away. And that's one thing that's what we're doing. And so go look at it. It's a money back guarantee, like everything else I do, and stuff. And another thing I have. I'm doing my marketing schools. I have one in February the 1st. And then in March, and I can't think of the date, just a second.
22nd through the 25th.
Yeah, 22nd. Thank you. You're ahead of me.
I'm looking at it right now.
I'm doing a school with Don Notto, and this is going to be focused on the stocker cattle business. And what I would classify a stocker cattle as anything that I don't plan on owning over a year. And this can include cows,
Sure.
and stuff. But I truly believe that, every ranch needs to, have sheep. Every rancher needs to understand the stocker cattle business and stuff.
Yeah, that safety, I'd say that's another name for it, is the safety valve business.
Yep. And I will give you a quick example of that. And here, I've set up the cows that I own so I can sell a calf, a 500 to 550 pound calf in March in grass fever in this area that I live in because of the Flint Hills and stuff. And so that's the way we're set up to do. And so last year when we got ready to sell the calves are on another ranch, and I sell them with the rancher out there. And I got to thinking about that. What is their true value? They were selling for $1.85 at that time, which was a lot of money, And so I went and compared them to the September feeder board. And when you extrapolate back from this, what the September feeder board was at that time, the calves were worth $2.10. So we kept them and ran them through, and we did. If you're going to do that, you've got to use that market. That September feeder board back then, it was a real market, but you got to use it. You cannot say that, well, that's what they're going to be worth in September, And so you either got to hedge them, or else you got a livestock risk protection program them. But when you work through that, it said that when I got through and sold the calves this year, they actually brought in $2.44 because they got into a natural program and lots of things. So you've got to understand the markets and the relationships. And my calves, my spring calves, are they're livestock risk protected now for next September. And stuff. And some people could say, well, that's not truly sell buying. You understand what I'm saying? But if we're in the cow calf business, we're all in sell buying, because as soon as you keep that cow, you have bought the calf in her for whatever it costs you to run that cow. And people will, if they would get their costs down, they would discover that they buy some really expensive calves sometimes. So,
yeah.
That's my soapbox for this morning.
I appreciate that. And are these schools both in Claremore?
Yep.
So
because of COVID and everything, it's just easier. If you have to shut one down, it's just easier to shut it. We have a working agreement, and it's all the information's at Olson Ranch LLC.
Yep. I'll have a link to that in the show notes page for today as well, workingcows.net/221. And there are worse places in the world to be than Claremore, Oklahoma in February.
And also tell them that if they aren't completely happy, I will give them their money back.
All right. Sounds good. Wally, thanks for your time today.
Very good. Thank you. It's fun. Anytime.
Very good stuff there with Wally Olson. Always a joy to talk to him. Always appreciate his wisdom and insight and just experience and depth and breadth of experience in the industry, and encourage you to check out Olson Ranch LLC. Look at the schools he's got coming up. Check out Ranching.FYI. I mean, that the Gerald Fry School probably alone is worth the price of admission, but other great content on there from others in the industry, and so I encourage you to check that out. Really enjoying just capturing some of this Patreon bonus content. Would encourage you to head over to workingcows.net/support and check that out. Just really been trying to be intentional about that, and got some really cool things planned coming up for 2022. So looking forward to that. And again, this podcast is always going to be free, the hour or so a week that I get to put out, but I've been trying to capture at least 10 minutes of bonus content from every guest of late. And so I've been trying to put that out as some bonus content. And then later on this year, I'll go to putting out 140 or so minute episode of all of the guests from the month per month. To the Patreon subscribers. There was a group who started early on at a $5 bonus content month, but I realized that I just couldn't do it for that, and I grandfathered them in and gave them access to the bonus content going forward on the website, on the Working Cows website, and then Patreon. Now it's $10 for bonus content, but been a good opportunity, I think, with some recent episodes. Steve Strassheim, we talked more about that salesman mentality. Talked to Wally about what it means to be an investor in the business. some others that come to mind. I talked to Nicole Masters about the imposter syndrome. So just encourage you to check that out at workingcows.net/support. Let me just say a big thank you to everybody who has gone on to the Amazon wish list and sent me equipment. This podcast sounds as good as it does because of you. And you guys have just been such an encouragement to me. Thank you so much. I bought very, very little podcast equipment, just some small portable mic stands. That's the only thing I bought. Everything else, lights, recording interfaces, it's all been sent to me. Microphones, webcams, it's all been sent to me by you guys, and it's just been a huge encouragement to me and given me the ability to more quickly, more efficiently produce a high quality product, and I'm trying to use it to the best of my ability. So thank you guys so much. Coming up next week on the podcast, I'll be talking to the guys from Roots and Ruminants again. Episode 222 is with Jared Knock and Justin Frichty of Roots and Ruminants, and they will be with us for the Farm and Ranch Conference in Deadwood. They're going to record a live podcast episode with Steve Kenyon talking about soil health. So just let me one more time lay out the pitch for this Farm and Ranch Conference that we've got coming up. If you want to, there are tours of local agricultural businesses happening in the morning of January 21st. Then in the afternoon of January 21st from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., we've got Elaine Fraze doing a succession planning workshop, and we would love to see multiple generations of every operation sitting around the table together, starting to put together the framework of a plan. So that's Friday afternoon, January 21st. Then the morning of January 22nd, we have Steve Kenyon with us for the whole morning, 9 to noon, talking about soil health, talking about, how do we manage to continue to increase the health of our soil. And so another great opportunity. And then in the afternoon, we go into breakout sessions. And I've said this before on the podcast with Jared Knock and Justin Frichty, but I will just say it this way. I might not ever do a Working Cows conference, but this just happens to have worked out to be a real close approximation of what we would end up with if I did a Working Cows conference, because we've got a lot of past guests in the breakout sessions as well as the keynote sessions. So we've got people like Ken Olson, who is a fantastic ruminant nutritionist from South Dakota State University, is going to be there for a breakout session. Natalie Kavorik is going to be there for a breakout session about social media. Luke Kavorik is going to be a member of a bullpen discussion that evening with Justin Tupper from U.S. Cattlemen's Association and a couple of others. Ken Olson's going to be on that one as well, Luke Kavorik, Justin Tupper, and I think one other. And then, as I said, the live podcast recording with Jared Knock and Justin Frichty also taking place in the breakout sessions that afternoon. So going to be just a real great time, January 21st and 22nd in Deadwood, South Dakota. Deadwood is a place that's nice to visit even in January. Getting there, could be a challenge, but generally speaking, the Black Hills of South Dakota is a banana belt around in this part of the world. So really encourage you to maybe even make the trip from a long ways away to come in for the South Dakota and Wyoming Farm Bureau Young Farmers and Ranchers Farm and Ranch Conference. And you don't have to be young to come. So we want multiple generations there, especially for that succession planning workshop on Friday afternoon. So more information, of course, can be found at workingcows.net/221, the show notes page for today. Encourage you to check that out, and looking forward to talking to a couple of the people that'll be there, Justin Frichty and Jared Knock, next week on the Working Cows podcast. We'll see you again real soon.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.
Number 1.